Okay, today in content that nobody has asked for, literally no one. I'm going to talk you through my solar setup at home for a couple of reasons. One, this is a new thing to me, but I spent quite a lot of time researching it. And I really struggled when I was getting my solar setup to find videos from the general public explaining what they've had and why they've had it. I found loads of videos from people trying to sell you things, from microinverters to optimizers and all sorts of things. And I'm really pleased with the setup that we've ended up with. But I have wasted some money along the way because I didn't get everything done in one hit. I've kind of added to it as time's gone on. So as an overview, and we'll have some sexy B-roll in here, we have 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 8 is 18, plus 9 plus 18 is 27. 27 440 watt Vertex panels. 18 of which have solar edge microinverters on, or optimizers, whatever you want to call them. A 13.5 kilowatt Tesla battery, and then 9 panels that are on a string that goes straight into the Tesla battery. And I know that sounds really techno-babbly and boring, or if you're someone who knows about this stuff, I've massively oversimplified, but I will explain what all that means. So effectively, we've got 27 panels. It's January currently, and it's, what is it, 9:30, something like that? 9:45, and we are currently generating not a huge amount because of the time of day. The sun rises there, and it sets over there. So we're currently generating 1 kilowatt. But yesterday, similar day to today, we generated 13.7 kilowatts, which fully charged our battery and was enough to power the whole house overnight. So yesterday, we didn't draw anything from the grid whatsoever at any point. So I'm going to talk through initially the setup we had just to start with, what that cost and why we went for that, and then I'm going to show you the additions we made to it. Okay, so we're now at what I call the control center because I'm middle-aged and boring. The first thing we need to look at is why we get solar, or why you get solar. The obvious thing is money saving, and the original setup that we had installed was designed so that it would have paid itself back within about 7 years. My goal with the solar is more to be off-grid. So we live up on a hill, we get power cuts quite often, so we wanted protection in the case of a power cut. Our water comes from a borehole here, our sewerage is on a septic tank, we have a big thing for the gas to live in. So the only thing that we bring into the property is the electric from this pylon here, and we are the last house on the line. So a big part of this for me was about being self-sustaining, off-grid, whatever you want to call it, which is why batteries were so essential. But we'll start here. This is the Tesla gateway. This is a really clever bit of kit, as well as being kind of the brain of your system. This has in it don't open your Tesla gateway. This has in it a great big solenoid, and you can hear it. If the power goes down or you turn your system off grid, a solenoid in here switches over and disconnects you from the grid. The reason that's important, and the reason some systems don't do off grid, or because this sounds ridiculous, right? I assumed that every solar system that had a battery, if the power went down, would continue to power your house. That's something that I just assumed was the way it worked. It's actually not. Your system has to have something like this to disconnect it from the grid. Otherwise, if someone were working on the cables near your house, they could get electrocuted by the power being fed back. So the system has to disconnect itself from the grid. So that's primarily what that does. And this is our battery that all of the power gets fed into. You can just have that as your setup and have all your solar panels feed straight into this. The original setup that we had also included this solar edge inverter. Now the purpose of this, all of the original panels we had, which is 5 up here, which are, these ones only get sun at the very end of the day, 5 on the front and 5 on top of the garage with the flat roof, 8 on top of the garage with the flat roof. All of those have microinverters on, and the idea is that if one of those panels is shaded or doesn't have full sun, it doesn't bring down all of the other panels to the average of that panel on that section, because that's how it works if you have them on what's called a string. So that was the system that was originally installed, and it works okay. What I would say is that the positioning of the panels for this time of year is not ideal. So we have some on the flat roof garage, and they're at a very flat angle like that. Because the sun at the moment is quite low, they don't really get a lot of sun. The 5 on the front of the garage here, they do okay. They're nice and steep. They're almost south facing. They do well. These ones currently don't get any sun at all. In the summer they will, but at the moment they're getting kind of ambient light. So yesterday, most of the other panels made half a kilowatt each, and these ones made about 200 watts, so 0.2 of a kilowatt. Almost not worth having. But in the summer, they'll give us a bit of feed and power towards the end of the day. So we then expanded this system with an additional 9 panels on the garage. Now those 9 panels are on a single string. They come in here, and they go straight into the Tesla battery. So there's an inverter in the Tesla battery. Those panels go straight into here, and that's for 2 reasons. 1, saved cost, and 2, this was then maxed out. So this is maxed out. We've got another inverter in here, and you are limited by the grid, the DNO. They tell you how much inverter capacity you can have. Those 9 panels on the garage are in what's called a traditional string. It's the least exciting way of doing it, but they generated those 9 panels generated more than the other 18 yesterday, just on their own, because the orientation of them is perfect for this time of year. A couple of things I've learned through doing this, things that I think are relevant. Panels, the actual solar panels, cost bugger all. They're like £50 each. So when your installer quotes you, it's worth maybe mentioning that you're aware the panels cost very cheap. The panels are very reasonable costs. I just spoke to a friend of mine yesterday about exactly this. So if the guys are up there, you've already had a scaffolding put up, it makes sense to put as many panels down as you possibly can, which is what I wish I'd done in the first place. I've cost myself a lot of money by putting in what I thought was enough and then adding to it later down the line. All of this stuff is quite expensive, the batteries especially so, but to get best value for money, particularly in this country, super, super important. So this charges up in the day, and then that power is used overnight. I'm not at home in the day very much. Most people who work aren't. So most of that power will be wasted. You can sell it back to the grid. You get 15 pence per unit, but that's not a particularly efficient way of doing it. So I think that's kind of everything on the system. I don't know if there's anything else I need to add. Total costs, sorry. Initial setup. So this, 5 panels here, 5 panels there, 8 panels on the flat roof garage, all with micro inverters, installed, fitted by a very good company called Carbon Zero in North Wales, was about £13,000. These are 8 grand on their own. So actually the rest of the system is about 6 grand. That's separate to this, that's separate to this, the labour, the scaffolding costs, all of that. The additional 9 panels I put in the garage cost me another £3,300, mostly labour costs. The actual panel costs very, very minimal. I am going to get 6 more panels and we're going to put them in the garden, and we're going to just pay an electrician to fire them in to the power wall. That is going to cost us under £900. Solar's not a thing you can DIY, but if you could, it'd be a lot cheaper than it is. Okay, a couple of bits I didn't cover in my rambly waffle before. Questions that I've been asked by other middle-aged men that have been interested in what I've been doing. Why is it not on the house? The house is, it's like a barn conversion, but it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 dormer windows. There isn't one long section of roof that you could fit solar on. If we didn't have all the dormer windows, absolutely right, you could do one full run of south-facing solar, it'd be perfect. But the roof just, there isn't, if we look at the roof right now, there isn't a single part of the roof that isn't cast in shade by another part of the roof, apart from on the very end where you could fit like 1, maybe 2 panels. So that was never going to work. We also couldn't put all of it ground mounted. I know there's enough space out the front, but you need, above a certain number of panels, you need planning permission for ground mount. What's super interesting with that is if you build a shed, you don't need planning permission for a shed, and you could build 5 sheds and put 50 panels on them, and that would be fine. But that's a curiosity of planning laws in the UK. Why have we got them all facing in different directions? That's to try and spread our production out through the day as much as possible, rather than getting a big spike in production in the middle of the day. You want a nice progressive curve through the day. And the last thing I've been asked is, why is your battery and your power wall and potentially some quite expensive equipment all just outside on the wall of the garage? Couple of reasons. One, the Tesla Powerwall is fully rated for outside use from -20 to +50 degrees. I think that one's actually flood proof, which is great. And they are obviously a fire risk. Now, I don't believe there's been a single failure of a Tesla house battery pack. However, if there were a house fire, we all know what lithium-ion batteries do in case of a fire. You wouldn't want that in your house if there were a house fire. You can put them in the house, but the advice is to fit them in an outbuilding or a garage, or externally if you can. So for us, we can fit it externally on a garage wall, no problem whatsoever. Doesn't need any protection from the elements, doesn't need anything like that. Some people do put a little bit of a roof on them to protect them, but it's not necessary. Okay, so we go into the Tesla app. That shows us our status right now. So we're currently generating 1.2 kilowatts of solar. 0.3 kilowatts of that is going into the house for like your router. I've got a 100-watt heater in the garage to keep the cars vaguely cozy. I've got a Google Home, the fridge, the freezer, all that kind of stuff. So 0.3 kilowatts is the passive load of my house. We're currently taking nothing from the grid, and 0.9 kilowatts of that is going straight into the Powerwall. So if we go onto our production, that's our production now. The green line is how much we're producing. The blue line is how much is being eaten up by the house. That'll raise up to somewhere around the 4 kilowatt mark today, if it stays sunny like it is, which I think it will. If we go to yesterday, you can see production was up near 4 kilowatts yesterday. Again, the blue line is what's being used by the house. The green line is how much is being done by how much solar is being generated altogether, and how much of that is going into the Powerwall. We can just look at it as solar generation if we want. So 13.7 kilowatts. 1% was taken from the grid. It always says 1%. It never goes down to 0, but I don't think we actually took anything from the grid yesterday. If we look at the stats for the battery, you can see we started off with just the backup amount in the battery. The orange line shows how much charge went into the battery at different points of the day, and then the blue line shows the discharge rate. The green line shows the overall charge level of the battery yesterday. If we move that on to today, we can see again the battery dipped right the way down. So we ended up taking a tiny bit from the grid this morning, but it was under 0.1 kilowatts. Battery is now charging, and that level of charge will fill up again through the day. Now, long term, I'd probably like to have one extra battery, because we're going to end up overproducing in the summer, and we could use that for, if we needed to do dishwasher, whatever, that kind of stuff. So far today we've taken 0.4 kilowatts from the grid for the house apparently, and 5 kilowatts from the Powerwall. So in terms of money, we've used like 10 pence of electricity today from the grid. And if we manage to produce enough electricity today, we can sell back every extra kilowatt to the grid at 15 pence. So we might even end up being up for the day today. So that's the Tesla app. I think Tesla absolutely smashed that ecosystem. They do a really good job of that. There's other stuff you can do in here. Storm watch. So it will automatically detect when we had all that really bad wind the other week. It will charge your battery up from the grid, so you're covered in case there's a power cut. You can change how much of the Powerwall is available for backup. So if you set it all the way up to there, for example, it will charge from the grid and keep that much power in itself ready. Export to the grid settings, set it to charge from the grid. Various different bits and bobs you can do, and you can also set your pricing for so on. So it will tell you how much money you've saved, spent, exported, that kind of thing. So that's the Powerwall app. I think that's fantastic, and for me, that on its own is reason enough to go for a Tesla system over anything else. In the same way that I say, if you're into electric cars, I think the Tesla ecosystem makes that more viable than other electric cars. I think same thing. For comparison, I also have the Solar Edge system, which covers the original set of panels that we had installed. So it covers the original 18, not the later 9. And I just think comparatively, It's fine, but it feels a little bit 1996, you know. So you can see there what those panels that are shaded are producing. Bugger all. Well, not bugger all. It's half, right? So it's still something. We can go to what they've produced this week. So the ones that are not getting the sun are still producing half of the electricity of the ones that are directly in the sun, which is more than you would think. So I think that's everything on there.